I never thought I'd be the guy sharing his personal disaster online, but here we are. If you've ever felt like the black sheep in your family, buckle up, because mine tried to gift wrap my life's biggest accomplishment and hand it to my influencer sister like it was some cute surprise. I'm Eli. I'm 31, a veterinary technician who's been elbow deep in fur fleas and emergency surgeries for almost a decade. My job isn't glamorous, no luxury cars, no penthouse views, but I love it. There's something healing about being the calm in a room full of barking chaos. It's exhausting, sure, but every wagging tail and tearful thank you from a pet owner reminds me why I do it. Now saving for a house on a vet tech salary. That's the real wild ride. I've lived like a broke college freshman for most of my 20s. 3 roommates, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that smelled perpetually like burnt popcorn and regret. I drove a 2004 Civic with a mysterious rattle and no air conditioning. My meals were basically dollar ramen with a side of tap water and dreams. Meanwhile, there's my older sister Cassidy. She's 36, going on 22 if Instagram filters count. She's the walking embodiment of a Pinterest board with no substance behind it. Think faux spirituality, MLM boss babe energy, and a rotating door of baby daddies who all seem to vanish faster than her business ventures. Cass has 3 kids, 9 to 6, and a toddler who somehow already has a modeling portfolio. They're adorable, no doubt, but she uses them as props more than she parents them. Matching outfits, motivational captions, and a lot of single mama building an empire energy, all while she dumps them on our parents to sip overpriced lattes with her tribe of women manifesting greatness. She hasn't had a real job since she quit her retail gig at Forever 21 because it didn't align with her feminine flow. Yet somehow she's always flashing the newest iPhone and sipping mimosas in hotel robes, claiming it's all part of her healing journey. The secret, our parents bankroll the circus. Especially Dad. Dad's the kind of guy who taught me how to mow a lawn before I could legally drive, but handed Cass a platinum credit card when she said her aura was dimming. When I asked for help paying college textbooks. Work harder, Eli. When Cass wanted to start an herbal tea subscription box. He dropped $5,000 on packaging and never asked for a business plan. For years, I swallowed it, bit my tongue through all the favoritism. While I worked overtime shifts, saved every penny, and learned about HVAC systems and mortgage insurance on YouTube, Cassidy got free babysitting spa days and financial loans that mysteriously disappeared. But I stayed focused. I wanted a house, not a handout. And after nearly a decade of grinding, I finally did it. A modest 3-bedroom bungalow in a quiet neighborhood. Sure, it came with shag carpet in the bathroom and walls painted the color of radioactive mustard, but it was mine. Mine, I cried. No shame. I sat on the floor surrounded by dust and peeling paint and let myself feel 10 years of struggle finally pay off. Cassidy, she had her own home once. Dad handed her a sleek, modern 4-bedroom in a gated community 5 years ago. She sold it within 12 months to fund her ex's healing sound studio, which was really just a glorified garage band setup. He ghosted, the money vanished. She moved back into my parents' guest house and called it restarting her feminine alignment journey. And then just when I thought I could breathe, my phone rang one Tuesday evening after a brutal double shift. "Hey kiddo, you home? Your sister and I want to swing by, just to chat." Those words should have triggered every red flag I had. But I was tired. I said yes. 20 minutes later, a Mercedes and a shiny black Range Rover rolled into my driveway. Out steps Dad wearing his usual dad casual golf polo and Cassidy in 6-inch stilettos and a leopard print jumpsuit that looked like it belonged on a Vegas lounge singer. She sashayed up my porch like she was about to film an episode of Cribs. They didn't knock, just walked right in. Cassidy immediately critiqued the place. "This couch look very Craigslist." She ran a finger along the wall. "Wouldn't this be a perfect spot for a content wall? Maybe white shiplap with gold decals?" I was still trying to remember how to breathe when Dad dropped the real reason they came. "Eli," he said, hands folded like he was offering life advice. "Cass has been having a rough time lately. You know, the economy, the energy crisis. The patriarchy, she added, filming a selfie video mid-conversation. Dad continued, "We've been thinking. This house, it's too much space for just you. And your sister has kids. They need room to grow, structure, stability." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "You want me to give Cassidy my house?" Dad nodded like it was the most logical thing in the world. "She has a vision. This space could support her brand, and the kids would thrive here. You, meanwhile, you could get a nice apartment closer to the clinic." "Are you insane?" I blurted. Cassidy rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. I'm trying to build something real, Eli. The guest house lighting totally kills my vibe. I can't manifest my potential in 800 square feet." I looked at Dad. He was serious. That paternal blank stare that always meant do it for the family. "She had a house," I said. "You gave her one. She sold it." "She was following her heart," Dad said. "People make mistakes." "No," I replied. "She makes patterns." That's when Dad dropped the final bomb. "If you can't support your sister through this, you may want to reconsider your role in the family, and possibly in the will." Everything stopped. Even Cassidy. Yeah, they stopped recording. For the first time in my life, I didn't fold. I stood up, walked into my home office, and returned with a thick folder. I'd been keeping it since the day Cassidy sold her house. I never expected to use it, but something told me I might need proof someday. "You want to talk about roles and responsibilities," I said. "Let's." I tossed the folder on the coffee table. Inside receipts, social media posts, bank transfers, records. All of it. The house you gave her worth $80,000. She sold it for $882,000, then dumped $200K into a sound bath startup, another $300K into crypto, $75K into that pyramid vitamin thing. The rest God knows. Dad looked stunned. Cassidy laughed nervously. "That was years ago. But you're still asking for handouts today." I leaned in quiet but steady. "Cassidy has already spent her inheritance, probably twice. You want to guilt trip me into giving away the only thing I've earned not happening." Dad opened his mouth, closed it. Cassidy's face twitched, her influencer composure slipping. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "No," I said. "I regret not drawing boundaries sooner." I didn't yell, I didn't curse, I just stood my ground. And that's when everything changed. After they left that night, I expected some silence. Maybe a passive-aggressive text from my dad or a cryptic cutting toxic people out Instagram post from Cassidy. But what I got instead, a full-blown ambush. It had only been 3 days. I was at work helping with a delicate surgery on a rescue spaniel who'd eaten a sock her second time doing that, by the way, when my phone started buzzing. I ignored it at first. Then it wouldn't stop. Text after text, voicemail after voicemail. My supervisor noticed. "Everything okay?" "Probably just my sister being dramatic," I muttered. Or worse. During my break, I checked my phone. First message. Mike, next door neighbor. "Hey man, is everything all right? There's a moving truck in your driveway." Second message. Karen, neighbor, 2 houses down. And yes, she's ironically the nicest Karen alive. Your dad and sister are here. Movers, too. Are you moving?" Third message from Mike again, this time with a photo. A U-Haul, backed into my driveway. Movers hauling furniture across my front lawn. My front door wide open. I swear my heart stopped. I called Mike. "Tell me this is a joke." "Wish it was." "Your sister's directing movers like she's shooting an HGTV episode. She even brought a locksmith." A locksmith. I barely remember the drive home. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. My brain was stuck on a loop. They're actually doing it. They're trying to take my house. As I pulled onto my street there, it was the horror show in real time. Cassidy was in full influencer mode, walking around with her phone on a selfie stick, narrating like this was a behind-the-scenes tour. "We're finally manifesting our dream space, guys. Just wait till you see the upstairs. It's gonna be the ultimate kids' zen zone." Her kids were running wild on my lawn. The toddler was coloring on my garage door with a bright orange marker. Her middle kid was dragging a lamp across the driveway. My dad stood beside a guy in a utility van, the locksmith, who was literally changing my locks. I parked my car halfway across the driveway so the U-Haul couldn't move, then got out chest pounding. Cassidy looked up and groaned like I was the one ruining her day. "Seriously, Eli, you're early. You ruined the reveal." I was going to live stream the makeover once everything was inside. I live here, I said, voice low but boiling. This isn't a set. This isn't your studio. This is my house. Dad stepped forward like he was negotiating a merger, all calm and fake smile CEO energy. Eli, we didn't want it to come to this, but you left us no choice. Cassidy needs this house. Her children deserve space. She lives in your guest house, I snapped. For free. Dad waved a hand like that was irrelevant. It's not about rent, it's about potential. She's building something. You're single. You don't need all this. He said it like being single was a disqualifier for owning property. I turned to the locksmith, who was now nervously fiddling with his toolkit. Did you verify ownership before changing those locks? He blinked. They said it was a family property. I pulled out my phone, opened a file with the deed mortgage statement and tax records. This is my house. I'm the only name on any legal document. You're changing locks on a home that doesn't belong to them. He backed away slowly, like I had just handed him a live grenade. Cassidy crossed her arms, still filming. You're being ridiculous. Do you know how many creators would kill for a setup like this? My kids are literally being displaced right now. You displaced yourself when you sold your last house to fund a SoundCloud rapper, I snapped. And no amount of neon lighting is going to change that. She gasped. That was an intentional business decision. Don't drag my journey. At this point, I had my phone out too. Perfect, I said. Let's add some footage of you illegally occupying someone else's house. Maybe your sponsors will enjoy that. She lunged for my phone. Dad stepped between us. Let's calm down. There's no need to get law enforcement involved. Cool, I said. Then you won't mind if I do it? I called the police. The second I said the words breaking and entering in progress, Cassidy's entire influencer persona cracked like a cheap phone case. She spun around to her kids, shouted at them to stop touching things, and started whisper screaming at my dad about optics. It didn't matter. The police arrived within 15 minutes. 2 cruisers. Cassidy immediately went into full actress mode. Oh, thank God you're here, she sobbed, holding her youngest like she was being rescued from a war zone. My brother is trying to make us homeless. I'm just a single mom trying to survive. The officer nodded politely. Ma'am, we'll need ID and documentation proving your right to be here. She froze. Dad stepped up, fumbling through a briefcase that definitely didn't come from a lawyer's office. He pulled out printed documents that looked like something from a PowerPoint presentation. Here, he said, handing them over. The officer took one look and raised an eyebrow. Sir, these aren't legal property records. This is a printed slideshow with clip art and bullet points. I handed over my real documents. Here's the deed, title, tax statements, and my ID. The second officer nodded. Mr. Hughes, he said, using my last name, you're the legal owner. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to vacate the premises. Cassidy shrieked. You're siding with him. Look at my children. Children being present doesn't override trespassing laws, the officer replied. And that's when the chaos really began. Cassidy tried to block the movers from carrying out her stuff. Don't touch my furniture. This couch was blessed by a Reiki healer. Dad was on the phone with someone, probably his lawyer, though judging by his face, they weren't answering. The locksmith apologized at least 5 times before fleeing the scene. One of the movers walked up holding a glitter-covered vision board that said, Cassidy's Empire 2024 in gold letters with old Zillow screenshots of my home glued onto it. Where should I put this? In the trash, I said. One of Cassidy's kids. The middle one, bless his brutally honest heart, looked up at the officer and said, Are we going to jail, like when Mommy took stuff from that store? Cassidy turned beet red. Sweetie, remember what we talked about grown-up secrets. The officer raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, are there any outstanding warrants we should know about? She blurted out a laugh. Of course not, I'm a public figure. Turns out she actually did have an open warrant for petty theft. Nordstrom, 2022. Tried to walk out with a $600 handbag as a brand partnership opportunity. Guess what? The store disagreed. They ran her name. One officer disappeared into his car, came back 5 minutes later with handcuffs. The meltdown that followed deserves its own Netflix special. She screamed about oppression. She tried to film her own arrest. She asked for a better lighting angle for her mugshot. Her toddler wailed. Dad tried to convince the police to reconsider since we're a reputable family. No one cared. Cassidy was driven off crying and live streaming with one hand behind her back. Dad stood there surrounded by scattered furniture trying to salvage dignity. I just looked at him. Any other bright ideas? He didn't answer. Instead, he tried to gather his fake documents, but the officer intercepted them. "Sir, attempting to use forged documents to gain property access is a crime. We'll be keeping these for evidence." Dad's silence spoke louder than anything else. I watched them go. Then I turned to the movers and neighbors, all wide-eyed. "Thanks for the heads up," I told Mike and Karen. "Next time I'm getting cameras." After the police left and Cassidy's fake lashes and live stream dreams drove off in the back of a patrol car, the silence around my house felt almost peaceful. Almost. Dad stood there for a few minutes like he didn't know what to do next. Then he gave me one of those looks, that half-disappointed, half-superior glare he used to give me when I brought home a B instead of an A. "This isn't over, Eli," he muttered, grabbing a box of Cassidy's scattered notebooks. I didn't say a word. He shuffled to his car papers, still in his hand, and peeled out of my driveway like he was escaping a crime scene. Maybe because he kind of was. Once they were gone, I just stood there on the porch, staring at my door, freshly scratched lock, halfway changed half a dozen footprints on the welcome mat. For a second, I wondered if this was all just some fever dream brought on by too many overnight shifts and microwaved burritos. Then I looked at the security camera I had just installed the week before and realized it had caught everything. Oh yeah, this wasn't a dream. This was just the start. The next morning, I got a call from the locksmith. "Hey, this is Derek. I just wanted to say I'm really sorry about yesterday. They showed me some documents. I thought it was legit. I should have double-checked." He sounded panicked, like the guy hadn't slept. "I'm not pressing charges," I told him. "But I need a favor." A pause. "Anything, man?" "I need you to give a written statement about what they showed you. Exactly how they convinced you." And he did. Derek turned out to be the MVP I didn't know I needed. His statement, including photocopies of the forged family trust documents Cassidy and Dad handed him, became Exhibit A in what would turn into a very messy, very public legal disaster. Because here's the thing. Once someone gets arrested, it opens a door. Especially when there's a paper trail. And oh boy, Cassidy had left a lot of glitter-covered breadcrumbs. Turns out the shoplifting warrant wasn't a one-off. In the days after her arrest, my inbox started blowing up. Small businesses, local vendors, even a couple of beauty brands she'd partnered with all reaching out. Cassidy had been running a scam for years. She'd accept free products or brand deals, then either return the merchandise for cash or never follow through on the posts. In some cases, she'd even resell the products under a fake business name she made up. I kid you not, one was called Crystal Vibes Wellness Boutique. Instagram never saw a single sponsored post from that brand. Worse, some of the companies had non-disclosure agreements and contracts she blatantly violated. And now they were ready to sue. But wait, it gets better. One of her ex-boyfriends, the SoundCloud guy she sold her house for, had a falling out with her about 6 months ago and had kept receipts. Literal screenshots of messages where Cassidy bragged about tricking old investors, aka Dad, into handing over more money by faking pregnancy, crying about mental health, and threatening to disappear with the kids. Turns out Cassidy wasn't just entitled. She was strategic about it. The moment I passed those screenshots to my lawyer friend, because yes, I called in backup, things started spiraling fast. Dad, of course, was neck deep in the fallout too. Turns out those fake documents he brought to my house, he didn't just print them for show. He had actually tried to submit something similar to his bank 6 months earlier when refinancing a personal loan claiming the guest house and my house were both part of a shared estate, which, in case it's not obvious, is called fraud. The bank flagged it internally but didn't pursue it until now. Now, with a police report, an arrest record, and a locksmith's written statement in circulation, they had all the reason they needed to start digging. And oh, did they dig. A week after the attempted takeover, I came home from work to find a letter taped to my door from the IRS. Apparently, Dad had also claimed Cassidy as a dependent on his taxes for the last 5 years, despite the fact that she was making business income from online courses, brand partnerships, and sponsored mompreneur events she hosted in her living room, none of which she reported. When I called my lawyer friend, she actually laughed. She's not just entitled, Eli. She's a walking audit. I should have been overwhelmed, but honestly, I felt calm. Like the calm after a storm where you're just watching the wreckage float away. Because for once, I wasn't the one cleaning up someone else's mess. I wasn't the one bending over backward to keep peace or preserve the illusion of family unity. I was done with that. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about finally setting the record straight with documentation, with boundaries, with consequences. 3 weeks later, I found out something that surprised me more than anything. Cassidy's ex, the one who fathered her oldest kid, Jackson, had filed for full custody. Apparently, the minute he saw the viral clip of her arrest, which, yes, someone uploaded to YouTube, he contacted CPS. Not out of spite, but because, and I quote, "the kids deserve better than being set decorations for Instagram lives." He's remarried now to a child therapist, and he won the custody battle. All 3 kids, even the ones who weren't biologically his, are now living with him and his wife. He's in a stable home. The kids are enrolled in public school. They're in therapy. They're happy. Cassidy, meanwhile, had fled the state. Somehow, she ended up at our mom's house in Florida, the same woman who divorced Dad years ago because she got tired of being treated like an ATM for Cassidy's disasters. I got a letter from Cassidy about a month after everything went public. Handwritten, no glitter this time. She begged me to help her. Said she'd changed. Said she wanted to rebuild our bond. Said she'd promote my vet clinic on her social media as repayment, as if I wanted to advertise animal surgery to her remaining 6,000 followers, most of whom were bots or MLM Huns trying to sell collagen powder. I wrote no across the letter in red marker and mailed it back. No explanation, no response, just no. I didn't need to say more. And here's the best part, the full circle moment. Remember the folder I mentioned? The one I kept for years with receipts, records, screenshots. I made a second one, updated it, printed clean copies, put everything into neat legal folders. Gave it to my lawyer friend to hold. Because people like Cassidy and Dad, if I'm being honest, don't just stop. They pause, they regroup, they find new angles. But now I'm ready. Let them try again. My house is mine, my boundaries are real, and my peace. That's permanent. The first time I saw the viral video, I was eating leftover Thai food in my sweatpants, half watching reruns of Parks and Rec, and trying to decompress from a week of chaos. Then my phone buzzed. "Karen, my neighbor Eli, is this your sister link attached?" I clicked it, already bracing myself. And there she was. Cassidy, mid-breakdown, mid-handcuff, mid-live stream. The caption, "Influencer gets arrested while illegally moving into brother's house," screams about aesthetics and energy vibes. It had over 200,000 views. By the end of the week, it had over 1 million. I'll admit it, I laughed. Not because I wanted to see my sister suffer despite everything she pulled. I wasn't rooting for her to crash. But because the absurdity of it all was finally out there. Public, verified, no more gaslighting, no more pretending I was just too uptight or not supportive enough. Cassidy had exposed herself, and not with some spiritual reveal your truth caption, but with real documented proof that she tried to steal her own brother's house and live stream it like a real estate haul. The internet ate it up. There were TikTok stitch reactions, parody voiceovers, even a remix of her screaming, "I need good lighting for my brand," auto-tuned to a beat and set to clips of people packing U-Hauls in fast motion. I'm not even joking. My favorite comment? Imagine spending your whole life getting handed things and then being shocked when someone says no. Peak delusion. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the silent sibling. I wasn't the one being told to just let it go for family's sake. People saw what I'd dealt with for years, and it felt like I could finally exhale. But I didn't get comfortable. I got prepared. Because here's the thing about people like Cassidy and Dad, if we're being honest, they're resilient in all the worst ways. They don't learn lessons, they learn new tactics. So I made a list. Step 1, reinforce the house. I upgraded the security system, installed cameras with motion alerts, replaced the garage door keypad, and changed every single lock front, back, even the attic. Hell, I even installed floodlights that would make a runway jealous. Step 2, protect my career. My vet clinic, the one I'd quietly helped grow over the last 6 years, had started seeing some indirect blowback. A few fake reviews popped up calling me toxic or abusive to women. Sounded suspiciously like Cassidy's burner accounts. So I sat down with my boss, laid out everything, the whole story. He just nodded, then said, "We've got your back. If anything escalates, let us know. And maybe avoid putting glitter in any post-op cones." We laughed. That mattered more than I thought it would. Step 3, paper everything. I created a digital vault, scanned copies of everything related to the house, the police report, Cassidy's arrest, and all the fake documents my dad tried to use. I uploaded them to 3 different cloud drives, emailed them to my lawyer friend, and even handed a hard copy to my neighbor Mike with instructions, only open if things go sideways again. "Am I in a spy movie now?" he joked. "Let's just say, it's a low-budget family thriller," I replied. Then came the emails. One from a gossip blog, asking if I wanted to tell my side of the story. Said they'd pay $500. One from a podcast, some influencer drama channel wanting me to spill the tea on air. And then one from Cassidy. Subject line, "Let's talk." For real this time. I didn't respond to the first 2. As tempting as it was to publicly clear the air, I wasn't about to turn my life into a clickbait circus. My piece wasn't for sale, but the 3rd email, Cassidy's. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't angry. No emojis. No passive-aggressive, "you're hurting the kids" language. Just a short paragraph that said she felt like the world was collapsing around her, and she finally understood what she'd done. That last sentence, I didn't believe it. Cassidy had always been a master at saying the right thing when things hit rock bottom. But it wasn't change. It was survival. So I did the same thing I'd done with her letter. I replied with one word, "No." Blocked her. Again, Dad tried once more too. He showed up at my clinic unannounced, wearing a blazer like he was going to a board meeting, not trying to fix the family he'd torn apart. "We need to talk," he said. "Some things have gone too far." I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. Calm, cold. "Yeah," I said. "They have, and I'm not the one who took it there." He started to protest something about public image, how his coworkers were asking questions, how he might lose his board seat at the club. "And that's my problem," how I asked. He blinked, like it hadn't even occurred to him that I wasn't here to protect him anymore. "You've always been dramatic, Eli," he muttered, making a scene instead of handling things quietly. I let out a short laugh. "No, I handled things quietly for 30 years. And when that didn't work, I handled them legally." I stepped back, still holding the door. "You can leave now, and don't come back without a lawyer." He left. Not a word more. What came next wasn't dramatic. No final showdown, no slamming doors. Just distance. Real, legal, emotional distance. Cassidy went quiet online, probably at the advice of her public defender. Her account went private. Her brand partnerships disappeared. The last thing I heard, she was staying with a wellness coach in Tampa who specialized in energy detoxes. Dad resigned from his company 2 months later. Personal reasons, the press release said. But I'd seen the financial audit paperwork, the kind that doesn't lie. And me, I stayed here, in my house, my actual house. I fixed the garage door, the toddler colored on. Painted over the chalkboard wall Cassidy had started in what was supposed to be her vision board studio. Refinished the kitchen cabinets and finally removed the last of the horrible orange paint from the hallway. Then I did something small, but powerful. I planted a tree in the backyard. Nothing big, just a young dogwood. Simple, low maintenance. But every morning now, I sit on the porch with coffee in hand and I look at it. Because here's the thing. Cassidy tried to build her life on projection, on followers' aesthetics, shortcuts. But I built mine with roots. And now that I've stopped looking over my shoulder, I've got room to grow. It's wild how peace doesn't come with a parade. No fireworks, no epic music montage. Just quiet. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for the next crisis to hit. I wasn't tiptoeing around Cassidy's emotional landmines or bracing for Dad's guilt-laced phone calls. I wasn't holding my breath. I was just living. And honestly, that was the biggest win of all. Work started to feel different. Not in the dramatic, I got a promotion and a corner office kind of way, but in the subtle, soul-deep way that mattered more. I had this rescue beagle named Rosie come in all ribs and sad eyes. Her owner had dumped her after she got hit by a car, claiming they couldn't afford a broken dog. We patched her up. Pins in the leg, gentle recovery. I stayed late for 2 nights just so she wouldn't wake up alone in the kennel. 2 weeks later, a retired teacher adopted her. Sent me a photo of Rosie curled up in her lap wearing a new pink collar with a tag that said, "Lucky me." I don't know. It hit me harder than usual. For so long, I'd been grinding just to survive. To get away. To build something of my own. But now I had space to feel again. To actually enjoy what I was building. Something else happened too. My old high school friend Talia moved back to the city. She messaged me out of nowhere, said she'd heard about the family drama, but only through mutual friends and YouTube gossip. She wanted to grab coffee if I was open to it. We met up at this local place I liked. Casual, no expectations. Talia was the same, but different. Softer, maybe. She had that kind of presence that made you feel calm just sitting near her. Used to work in nonprofit fundraising out west, but had moved back to be closer to her mom, who wasn't doing great health-wise. We talked for over 2 hours. Nothing deep at first, mostly catching up, trading bad family stories, laughing too loudly about high school mistakes. But something about it stuck with me. Maybe because it wasn't forced. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't someone needing a place to crash or a favor to fund their next business idea. It was just good company, safe energy. We started hanging out more. Nothing official. Just 2 people rebuilding their lives, 1 walk and 1 iced coffee at a time. And then came the letter. Not from Cassidy this time. Not from Dad either. It was from a law firm, one I didn't recognize. I opened it slowly, half expecting another threat or weird demand, but instead, it was a formal request for a meeting. Apparently, Cassidy had listed me as a point of contact for a guardianship clause she wrote during her influencer heyday. According to the documents, if she was ever incapacitated, detained, or publicly defamed, I was to be contacted in regard to the welfare of her children. I stared at it stunned. This was written a year ago. Before the arrest, before the scam unraveling, before she lost custody. And now? Now it meant nothing legally. The kids were safe with their dad, but the fact that she'd named me, the one person she spent her entire adult life dismissing using mocking, it was weirdly emotional. She trusted me with her kids even if she'd never admit it. And part of me hated that it still made my chest ache. That after everything I still cared in some quiet, unreachable corner of my heart. But I didn't respond. I folded the letter, slipped it into my bottom drawer, and left it there. I'm not heartless. I'm just healed enough not to be manipulated anymore. The city was buzzing for a while, not just from Cassidy's downfall, but because the story kept evolving. One of the MLM companies she scammed came out publicly. Their PR team released an official statement confirming she'd misrepresented her role and income and that they were pursuing restitution and accountability. Her ex, the SoundCloud rapper, posted a petty TikTok stitching her arrest clip with the caption, "That's why I left. Y'all thought I was the scammer." Ugh. And even though I wasn't part of any of that, people still reached out. Some to share support, others just to be nosy. But I kept my circle tight. Talia, my coworkers, my neighbors who now greeted me with any new U-Hauls this week like it was an inside joke. And it kind of was. My life had gone viral, but I wasn't riding the wave. I was rebuilding on the shore. Then one day, a package arrived. No return label, no note, just a plain brown box on my porch. Inside 3 items. A stuffed bunny I recognized Cassidy's youngest used to carry it everywhere. A burned CD labeled Jaden's birthday homemade footage from years ago. And a flash drive. I hesitated, plugged it into an old laptop I didn't care about. It was a folder, photos, videos, notes, all from Cassidy's branding era, but not the polished stuff. These were raw, unfiltered. Her crying in the bathroom, makeup smeared. Her talking to the camera late at night, whispering that she felt like a fraud. That she didn't know who she was without an audience. One clip she was recording from her bed. "I know Eli hates me," she said quietly. "And maybe he should. But he's the only one who's ever done the work. He shows up, I just take." I watched that one twice. Not because it made me feel better, but because it finally made things make sense. Cassidy wasn't just selfish. She was lost. Living for an audience that never cared, and a family that never gave her the tools to cope. I closed the laptop and put the box away. Forgiveness is weird. It doesn't come with a ribbon or a final verdict. Sometimes it's just not throwing the box out. Here's the full circle moment. A few months later, I was asked to speak at a local event, kind of a mentorship night for young adults going into animal care careers. I almost said no. Public speaking isn't exactly my thing, but something told me to go. So I did, and I told them the truth. About passion, about hard work, about how sometimes the people closest to you won't clap when you succeed, they'll try to steal the spotlight. Or your house, but that doesn't mean you stop building. You don't need to be loud to win, I told them. You just need to be honest, with yourself, with your life, with what you want. The applause was awkward, but real, and for once I wasn't invisible. Now, I've got a calm house, a growing garden, a few rescued dogs who think I hung the moon. Talia and we're still figuring it out. But there's laughter and respect, and nobody's trying to live stream our dinner. And Cassidy, she's disappeared from the public eye. Last I heard, she was attending some kind of intensive therapy program in Oregon, funded by one of her ex-MLM partners who believed in healing through accountability. Maybe it's real, maybe not. But it's not my job to fix her anymore. I used to think silence was surrender. Now I know it's peace, and sometimes the best revenge is never having to explain yourself again. If you had told me a year ago that my life would go viral, my sister would end up in court, my dad would lose his legacy, and I'd be sipping coffee in my backyard with actual peace in my chest, I would have laughed. Maybe cried too, but here I am. The drama didn't end with police lights and internet memes. Real healing isn't that cinematic. It's quieter. Like the moment I realized I hadn't thought about Cassidy all day and felt zero guilt. Or the time I helped an elderly woman carry her dachshund into the clinic and she said, "You have a calmness about you. It makes the animals feel safe." That one stuck. Because for most of my life, I didn't feel safe, not in my own home, not in my family, not in my skin. I was always bracing for something, judgment, manipulation, the next favor that came with strings attached. Now I just breathe. There was one last moment though. A final twist I didn't see coming. I was closing up the clinic late one Friday. Lights off, locking the back door. When I saw a car parked just outside the lot. Black sedan, engine off, headlights fading. I squinted. The driver's door opened, and out stepped my father, of all people. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown. Either way, his shoulders were slumped, his once impeccable hair grayer than I remembered. He didn't walk toward me. Just stood there holding an envelope. "I'm not here to fight," he said, "or explain. I just wanted you to have this." He placed the envelope on the hood of my car and stepped back. "I won't contact you again," he added. "This is yours, to do what you want with." And then he got back in the car and drove off. Didn't wait for a response. I stood in that parking lot for a long time. Just me, the crickets, and that envelope. I didn't open it right away. Took it home. Left it on the kitchen table while I microwaved dinner and fed the dog. Tried to ignore it. Couldn't. Eventually I sat down, took a breath, and peeled it open. Inside a single-page letter and a check. The letter was short, no excuses, just acknowledgement. "You were right. I enabled her. I failed you. I failed both of you, but only one of you ever learned to survive without asking. This check won't fix anything. I know that. But maybe it helps you build something beyond all this mess. Whatever you choose to cash it, rip it up, donate it, it's yours." The check, $10,000. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant, just calm. This wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was something my dad had never offered before. A choice. So I made one. I took the check, added some savings, and made a donation. To a scholarship fund for students going into veterinary medicine, especially those from unstable homes or underfunded schools. People like me 10 years ago. Kids who were told to give up their dreams because that doesn't pay the bills. The scholarship, I named it after Rosie. The little beagle who got left behind, then found her second chance. Felt fitting? I still think about Cassidy sometimes. Not out of anger or nostalgia, just curiosity. She faded off the internet almost completely. Deleted her profiles, her accounts, her brand. The only update I got came through her ex, the one who took the kids. He sent a photo at Christmas, the three of them smiling in matching pajamas. Happy, stable, safe. He included a note. They're doing great. Mason's in therapy, Jaden's building Legos instead of Instagram content, and Lila's learning to swim. No drama, just real life. Thanks for standing your ground when it counted. It changed everything. That one made me cry. Not the big ugly sobs. Just that quiet kind of tear, the one that slips out when you finally let go of a weight you didn't realize you were still carrying. Talia and I are still us. Nothing flashy, nothing rushed. We spend Sunday mornings at the farmer's market. She bakes. I fix stuff around the house. We've talked about building a dog run in the backyard, maybe even fostering dogs long term. No U-Hauls, no Instagram lives, just real conversations and mutual respect. She once said, "You don't talk to fill silence. You talk when it matters." And maybe that's the biggest growth of all. I stopped trying to convince people of my worth. I started living like I already believed in it. I know some people want revenge to be flashy. Lawsuits, headlines, jail time. But honestly, the best revenge I ever got was becoming untouchable. Emotionally, legally, financially, spiritually. They couldn't shake me anymore because I stopped handing them the power to. Every once in a while, someone still brings it up. A coworker, a friend of a friend, the occasional wait. Weren't you the guy whose sister tried to steal his house? And I just smile. Because yeah, I was. But now, I'm the guy who built something no one can take. The last thing I'll say is this. They always told me family was everything. They said blood is thicker than water, that I should keep the peace, that I was being selfish for setting boundaries. But you know what I learned? Sometimes peace looks like distance. Sometimes love looks like letting go. And sometimes family is just the people who don't need to be reminded to respect you. So yeah, I chose myself. And finally, that was enough. Story 2. While I paid for everything, while my brother lived like a king or queen, my parents said it was fair. I then made a move that left them stunned and departed in silence. I'm a 25-year-old man who works at one of the largest shops in our city as a diesel mechanic. Since I was 18, I have been doing this beginning as an apprentice and working my way up. I'm pretty damn excellent at what I do, not to brag. When the other mechanics are unable to diagnose those large Cummins engines, they contact me. Now I can close my eyes and tear them down and reconstruct them. However, my parents did not want me to live this life. My 52-year-old mother and my 54-year-old father had a grand scheme for me to attend college, land a nice office job, and become their ideal success story. You would think I was telling them I was going to be a professional trash diver or something when I informed them I was attending trade school rather than college. The disappointment was genuine. Then there is Jake, my 20-year-old younger brother. Where can I even begin with this child man? Imagine the most cliched, entitled Gen Z child you can think of. After that, double it by 10. Jake is that person. This guy is having the time of his life playing video games and discovering who he is while I'm out there crawling under trucks in 95-degree heat and coming home looking like I took a bath in motor oil. When I reached 21, the real fun began. By then, I was earning a respectable living. Although it wasn't Jeff Bezos money or anything, it was plenty to allow me to acquire a home if I so desired. However, I was slapped by my parents with this family should stick together lecture. I'm a fool. I fell for it. They dropped the bomb at that point. I had to start making rent payments, specifically $800 each month. I'm not opposed to paying rent, though. That's reasonable. Correct, I'm a grown-up earning money. I ought to help out around the house. This is where things go wrong, though. Jake doesn't pay. Nothing. Not at all. Their justification. He continues to attend school. Yes, school. What does it mean? He is enrolled in 2 paid classes at the community college, but since he spends more time on his PlayStation 5 than in class, he is certain to flunk nevertheless. This is crucial for background, so allow me to describe a normal day in our home. I had to be in the shop by 7 o'clock in the morning, which is 5:30. Dealing with irate clients, absurd deadlines, and engines heavier than my brother's car, I worked non-stop throughout the day. Jake, on the other hand, gets out of bed whenever he feels like it and may go to his one class of the day. He parks his butt on the sofa for his daily gaming marathon if he's feeling really ambitious. Mom cleans his room, does his washing, and prepares him breakfast, lunch, and supper. The child is living as if he had a personal butler. Me, if there's any food left when I come home, I'm lucky. Mom didn't make extra because she didn't sure when I would be home, so I spend most of my time at the drive-thru on my way back from work. It was almost comical how blatantly clear the double standards were. There won't be any issues if Jake leaves dishes in the sink. You are being really disrespectful to the home if I leave a coffee mug out. Jake is on the market for new gaming gear. Before he can complete his question, they will order it. For work, I need new tools. My real work, you know. You earn a nice living. That should be your own expense. Here's the problem, though, and it wasn't until long later that I discovered this. They were paying the mortgage with the money I paid in rent. Not like helping to do it. The entire damn payment was made with my $800. In essence, I was being treated like an unwelcome house guest while paying for the roof over all of our heads. I made several attempts to discuss it with them. It was the same in every conversation. Me, do you not find it inequitable that Jake stays here for free while I pay the rent? He's concentrating on his studies, Mom. Me, he is barely making it through his classes. Don't be envious of your brother because you were his age dad. Me, I was already working full-time when I was his age. Everybody's journey is unique, Mom. You can always move out if you don't like it, Dad. And we'd go round and round. Talking to a wall was like that. However, I was being intentionally gaslighted by the wall. The absurd part is that I endured this for years. I kept telling myself that it was just temporary and that Jake will mature and begin to contribute once they saw how dysfunctional it was. Rather, it grew worse. Much worse. In addition, my parents had a very unique definition of rent. They said that $800 just paid for basic utilities and my bedroom. Everything else was superfluous. Do you want to do the laundry? That's an additional $30 a month for power and water use. Instead of parking on the street, would you prefer to park in the driveway? Parking costs $50 per month. Do you need to keep your tools in the garage? $40 more for storage. I wish this were a lie. Jake is living like he's in a 5-star resort in the meanwhile. The main bedroom belongs to the child. Yes, you read correctly. He needed space for his gaming setup, so when he reached 18, they gave him the larger room. I share a bathroom with my parents while he has his own. As though I were still in high school. Get this too. My dad's office was converted into a special gaming area for him. To provide Jake a suitable streaming setup, they practically hauled all of my dad's belongings into the dining room. Where else am I going to perform basic maintenance so one day I'm changing the oil on my truck in the driveway? Jake emerges, complaining that his stream is being ruined by the noise. In fact, my dad had the audacity to insist that I use shop equipment to perform my car maintenance at the shop on my day off. Since it was upsetting, I'm not allowed to use it for personal automobiles. There are about 12 followers on Precious Jake's Twitch channel. The true kicker, though, they began to itemize my food consumption, which was the icing on the cake on Sunday. Not a joke. When Mom would go food shopping, a list with Mike's portion calculated down to the last piece of bread would appear on the refrigerator. On my tab, a gallon of milk costs $4.50. Breakfast consisted of 3 eggs, $1, and $4.50. Mom made portion of the supper. You had better pay for your portion of the ingredients, but this child is eating like a King Jake. Because of his nutritional requirements, Mom is taking him on special outings to Whole Foods. In other words, he became a health guru after seeing a YouTuber discuss organic food. He really has a snack cabinet designated Jake's Do Not Touch. I purchased a bag of protein bars for myself in the interim, but half of them were gone. When I brought it up the next day, my mother advised me to better conceal my food if I didn't want to share it with my relatives. Talk to your family about it. You could spread the irony on toast because it was so thick. The toughest aspect wasn't even the financial burden. It was the ongoing battle of the mind. Each family meal. The ones that I could join if I paid my share became a highlight reel of Jake's accomplishments. Jake may become a full-time streamer. In other words, he is leaving community college. Jake's investing sense is excellent. After viewing a TikTok on cryptocurrency, he purchased some dubious cryptocurrency. Jake is truly discovering his calling. He took a course on how to become an influencer using $300 of their funds. Me, I could literally save a trucking firm thousands of dollars in repairs, rebuild a whole semi-engine, and receive praise from my supervisor. And that's the most I could get. That's lovely, honey. Tell us more about your recently launched YouTube channel, Jake. Seeing my abilities and diligence was the worst part. It disregarded it entirely. At my shop, I earned Mechanic of the Month 3 times in a row, while they praised Jake's every little accomplishment. Crickets. On Twitch, Jake gained 100 followers. Mom prepared a celebratory supper for him. One day in particular sticks out. A large, 16-hour difficult gearbox overhaul on a $200,000 truck that needs to go out on the road as soon as possible is what I just did. The client was really pleased with my work. They handed me a $500 tip and sent my employer a thank you note. I was really thrilled to offer some wonderful news when I got home. For once. The home was in full party mode as I went in. Cake balloons, the whole 9 yards. My initial reaction was that perhaps they had finally taken note of my diligence. Not at all. Jake recently reached 1,000 YouTube followers. Mom had probably used my rent money to get caterers and had his streaming pals over. And as a gift to celebrate your accomplishment, Dad even got him a new microphone. Mom gave me a dog-like pat on the head when I tried to tell her my news, saying, "That's great, honey." Oh, would it be possible for you to pay your rent early this month? For a higher quality broadcast, Jake's internet has to be upgraded. I wish I could claim that this was the worst that happened, but it was only a warm-up. About 3 months ago, the actual concert took place. To put that in perspective, I had recently spent around $8,000 on a brand new set of professional gear. Any mechanic will tell you that having quality tools is essential to your job even if you're not in the field. I had to fund a portion of the job because these tools were essentially my future, but it was worthwhile because we're talking about snap-on everything, ratchet sockets, diagnostic equipment, and the works. I had one toolbox at home for personal projects and side work, but I kept the majority of my equipment at the business. It's not particularly costly, but it's probably worth about $2,000. Every tool was in its proper position, and I had everything properly ordered. Everything has labels. Yes, I am that individual. For this specific day, I even had some specialist diagnostic tools that I had saved up. We had a fleet of vehicles that needed to be ready by morning, so I had worked 2 shifts. I am referring to 16 hours of continuous effort. I had trembling hands. I wanted nothing more than to take a shower and collapse after consuming enough coffee to kill a horse. Around 1100 at night, I saw lights were on in the garage when I drew up to the home. Strange, given that my parents' automobiles were no longer there, but whatever. I was too worn out to give a damn. All I wanted was my bed. My heart stopped when I entered the garage. It had my toolbox on its side. There are tools everywhere. And Jake and his pals were there, obviously intoxicated, utilizing my expert diagnostic scanner as a beer pong setup doorstop. Have you ever seen the scene in a movie where the camera pans in on the face of the main character and everything falls silent? I was that person. At first, I was practically unable to comprehend what I was witnessing. These inebriated fools had transformed my garage into their own party space, and my equipment, my source of income, were present. Party accessories. Mike, Jake, and Yo all slurred as if this were completely usual. There had to be room for the table. I hope it's okay with you, buddy. Keep in mind that the garage door was held open by my 1-200 diagnostic scanner. Like confetti, my socket sets were all over the floor. Additionally, my neatly arranged toolbox appeared to have been struck by a tornado. I went crazy. It's not like punching, but I lost it. I wanted to, I assure you. but the type of fury when your voice becomes very quiet and is icy and lethal. Jake, what the devil did you do? This whole DNA waste simply shrugged. Calm down, dude. They are only instruments. Later, we will replace them. Only tools. As I approached my scanner, I saw that the screen was indeed damaged. That in itself is a great, the very least. I began looking through my other tools. Damaged, precise tools, missing ratchets and sockets. Simply gone. And as if nothing were wrong, these inebriated fools continued to try to play beer pong with me. At that point, a jerk wearing a Supreme sweatshirt, who was one of Jake's pals, tripped and poured beer all over my electrical testing apparatus. That's probably another $500 wasted. I took hold of Jake's shirt. Come on, it's hardly my proudest moment. Are you aware of the price of this stuff? Aggressively, he shoved my hand away. Now leave me alone. If they are so valuable, Dad will purchase you new ones. Give it up being such a jerk. I'll get new ones from Dad. I began photographing everything. The whole scenario, the beer cans, the devastation. Jake now had an anxious expression. What are you doing? I'm taking notes on everything before I contact the police. That quickly made him sober. You wouldn't risk it. We are related. My parents then entered the room. The time was ideal. Correct. After glancing at the site, Mom began to scold at me for grabbing Jake. Right behind her, Dad was already yelling at me for exaggerating. Dad answered, "They're just enjoying themselves," as if I were the villain. Just because you store your belongings in the garage doesn't mean they won't utilize it. I displayed the malfunctioning scanner to them. Mom's reaction: perhaps you might have a suitable place to store your belongings if you paid extra rent. That was it. Something inside of me suddenly broke at that point. Or perhaps it was mended at last. I'm not sure. I gave them a look, observed them closely. Jake is being treated as the victim by my mom. Jake knows he's untouchable, so he's grinning behind them. I responded, "You're right, real quiet. I should get my belongings properly stored." That evening, I walked upstairs, picked up my laptop, and began making calls. Naturally, Jake dozed out on the couch after everyone had gone to bed. I did something that I ought to have done years ago while I was sitting in my room. I created a spreadsheet. Yes, I understand. It's very thrilling, isn't it? But believe me, this spreadsheet turned into my destructive tool. I kept a record of every dime I had spent with them throughout the previous 4 years. $38,500 is the monthly rent of $800. $4,800 for utility costs. $2,400 for parking. $1,920 in storage costs. Contributions for food total about $7,200. Different costs for the home. They forced me to pay $5,000 in addition to the almost $60,000 or grand amount. Not to mention the numerous tools that Jake and his companions destroyed. As I'm calculating these figures, Jake sent me a text. "Hello, my friend. I apologize for the tools and other things. If anything breaks, Dad says he'll pay you $200 to replace it." Excellent. $200 for thousands of dollars worth of broken work equipment. I didn't answer at all. Rather, I began calling my friend Chris, who is a real estate agent. As it happened, he had a client who was renting out a garage apartment. Then to check my funds at my bank. Thank God, even though my parents were taking advantage of me, I had been saving money. Lastly, I asked my supervisor if I might take on some more shifts. This is where things become fascinating, though. Do you recall that I had been unknowingly paying their mortgage? I did some research, though. It turned out that their monthly mortgage payment was precisely the same as my $800 rent. Not by any means. That's right, it had been 4 years since they had made any payments on the mortgage. I thus devised a strategy. A lovely, karma-filled scheme. I started by signing the garage apartment's contract. Although it was little, it had a safe place for my equipment and prevented my little brothers from taking my belongings as decorations for parties. That following evening, I made the deposit. I took the second step and discreetly began transferring my belongings out. Not everything at once. I'm not a novice. Every day, only a few items while no one was home. First came the crucial things: the remnants of my tools, precious artifacts, and important papers. Because while no one ever looked at my things anyhow, no one noticed. In the third phase, I carefully recorded the tool damage, took pictures and videos, and obtained written testimonies from 2 of Jake's pals, who were really kind enough to express regret for what had transpired. I copied everything and kept it in 3 distinct locations. Trust me, this would be useful later. Step 4. I went to the bank and created a new account with a different bank entirely. I began to reroute my paychecks there and stopped all of my parents' accounts from receiving automated payments. However, I waited, which was a brilliant move. You see, I was aware that their mortgage was due on the 1st of each month, and the reason they hadn't saved any money was obvious to me. The entire time I was doing this, they had their steady source of income residing above. Life continued as usual. I continued to go to work and to nod in agreement throughout dinner as they commended Jake's most recent business venture. He was now certain that he could make a fortune with cryptocurrencies, continued to act as though nothing was wrong. Mom did attempt to discuss the tool incident with me. She once entered my room wearing the staged, worried expression she had mastered over the years. I understand that your tools are causing you distress, honey, but Jake feels terrible about it. Had you not left them in the garage, perhaps? I just murmured, "You're right, Mom," and nodded. I ought to locate a better location for my belongings. Her expression was one of relief. They probably believed that I was now getting their point of view. She had no idea that I was already 3 moves into my escape plan. The finest aspect, Jake continued to help me defend what I was about to do. There was new crap every day. Without asking, he took my car and returned with a full tank. Once more, he hosted his pals. In order to invest in his streaming business, he even dared to ask me to co-sign a loan. I'm witnessing my folks make everything possible in the meanwhile. His back ached from streaming for too long, so his father got him a new gaming chair. Now that he was too busy creating material, Mom was doing his laundry, folding it, and putting it away. All the while, I continue to get utility bills for my portion and am informed that I need to make additional contributions to the family. The problem with those who believe they are untouchable, however, is this: they never anticipate the collapse. This was going to be a long fall, buddy. On my calendar, July 31st was marked as the date I would be moving out. Why that particular date? Because August was going to be a really, really exciting month for my wonderful family on July 31st, and their mortgage was due the following day. For the first time in months, I had taken the day off from work, and I made sure to get up early around 5 in the morning. Early. Why? Because I wanted to go before they tried to talk me out of it or make me feel guilty about staying. I had seen enough Reddit stories to understand the typical course of events. I had already set up my new location. For weeks, I had been transferring things over covertly. My bed, my work attire, and a few cartons of strange items were all that remained. The previous evening, I had leased a tiny U-Haul and parked it in a corner out of sight. The finest aspect, I had planned my relocation for the day I knew would cause them the greatest pain. You see, I was positive they lacked the funds and their mortgage was due on the 1st. Because last week, when my mom asked me to lend her money for Jake's new streaming microphone, I unintentionally saw her online banking screen. They had less than $1,000 in their account. Getting my belongings out, leaving my key, and ignoring them until the inevitable meltdown was the plan. However, as they say, the best-laid plans don't work out. Jake staggers out of his room while I'm silently putting away my final box. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother is finally up before midday, only because he had been streaming all night. He glances at the package, looks at me, and then he's hungover. A full minute is spent by the brain processing what he is viewing. "What are you doing?" I simply continued to walk, didn't give him a glance. Then he saw through the open door that my room was almost empty. Dad, Mom, Mike is attempting to get away. Let's get started. My parents hurried upstairs and I heard their pounding footsteps. My dad's face is already becoming red and he's still wearing his bathrobe. Mom is close behind him. Waterworks is already underway. What does this signify? Dad is using his power. Voice. It's the same one that scared me as a child. No more. Calmly, I sat down in my box. I'm leaving. You really are. You can't simply walk away. How do you feel about your obligations to this family? I opened my spreadsheet and took out my phone. Do you mean these obligations? I began to read the numbers aloud. They had wrung every money charge and payment out of me while allowing Jake to live like a prince. As the numbers continued, Mom's expression changed from phony tears to genuine worry. Over 4 years, that comes to $60,000. I was done. The nicest aspect, as far as I'm aware, has been the mortgage. Tomorrow is the due day for the mortgage. I feared Dad could faint since his face changed from crimson to white so quickly. Mom took hold of the wall for balance. Jake simply stood there with his mouth hanging wide like a fish. Mom murmured, "You can't do this to us." I can, in fact, and I am. But hold on, there's more. I took out an envelope made of manila. This concludes the tool's documentation. Professional equipment valued at around $3,500 was damaged by Jake and his companions. Next week, I'll be submitting a small claims lawsuit, unless I receive full reimbursement. Jake began to splutter. However, you are my brother. I can't be sued. Observe me. Dad attempted to cross the door. You won't go until we resolve this. I work with heavy machinery all day, and I am 6 feet 2 inches tall. Dad is 5'10" and hasn't been to a gym since the 1990s. I stared at him until he made a move. My new place costs less than the rent you've been billing me. Jake's lifestyle was funded by the utility payments, the cost of keeping my tools in storage. Take a look at that outcome. Once more, I took up my package. I have every piece of paperwork, every payment, and every text message you sent requesting money, every bank statement, every receipt. Everything goes to a lawyer if you try to make trouble. Mom was crying uncontrollably. Now please, we don't have a mortgage. No longer my concern. Jake might be able to start covering the rent. Oh, hold on. It would mean he would need a job. Jake sprang at me. He slammed against the wall when I stepped aside. When not with his drinking companions, he's a real rough person, I said as I started to down the steps. I've already deactivated our joint account and updated my work's direct deposit details. I hope tomorrow's mortgage goes well. I heard my mother sob as she fell to the ground. Dad was shouting something about responsibility, duty, and family. I loaded my final box, got into the U-Haul, and drove to my new location, even though Jake was still threatening me from a safe distance. They were completely silent for around 6 hours. Then the text began. They started, "Oh goodness. Allow me to describe the events of that first day hour by hour." I observed how their communications changed over time, going from rage to fear to pure desperation. It was similar to observing the 5 phases of mourning. However, their financial security was the only thing that perished. Dad gave the first wave. All righteous rage. 8:15 a.m. Return here immediately. 8:20 a.m. You're making a grave error. 8:45 a.m. This is not how any of my sons behave. It is 9 in the morning. Pick up the phone. Jake displaying his typical maturity. It was 12:15 p.m. When I discover you, you're dead. It was 12:20 in the afternoon. I hope it's enjoyable for you to split apart the family. None of them got a response from me. For my records, I just took screenshots of everything. However, reality set in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They eventually checked their bank account because the mortgage payment was due the following day. Jake began to see the seriousness of the situation. It is 7:00 p.m.? Don't do this, dude, please. I'll reimburse you for the tools at 7:30 p.m. It is 8:00 p.m. Both parents are in a panic. 7:30 p.m. This is no longer amusing. That evening, I savored the tranquility in my new apartment, eating takeaway on my couch that no one else was allowed to use, and watching their messages come in. Things truly went south on August 1st, the next day. C missed the mortgage payment, but it was only the first thing they did. Do you recall all the services and subscriptions they had been using my rent money to pay for? Jake uses his premium internet to broadcast his subscriptions to video games. Mom's expensive subscription at the gym. Dad's golf club dues there, Disney Plus, Hulu, Netflix, and so on. It all began to bounce. Everywhere, their cards were refused. They were unable to pay the internet fee. Thus, Jake's Twitch stream fell down in the middle of the game. His discussion should have exploded for you to witness. All 15 viewers were somewhat perplexed. Then came the genuine panic. When the mortgage company started delivering letters, Mom contacted me in tears. About resolving this as a family, Dad left voicemails. Jake's streaming setup began to break apart piece by piece, and his messages became more urgent. The finest part, though, comes after. Through my cousin, the only relative I currently communicate with, they began to turn against one another. I heard the epic arguments when the father blamed Mom for not saving money. Dad is being blamed by Mom for pampering Jake. Jake accuses them of lacking a contingency plan. Everyone is accusing me of being self-centered. The icing on the cake. Jake needed to get a legitimate employment, similar to a real employment at the neighborhood Walmart. He had to assist with carrying groceries to automobiles in the sweltering summer heat on the first day. He spoke about the difficulty of manual labor on his Instagram. I almost strained myself trying to be silent. Greetings from the real world. They tried everything at the end of the first week. Dad visited my place of employment. He was let out by security. Mom attempted to use guilt to get my new address from my boss. No, he answered, laughing. I received a response from Jake's pals offering to cover the cost of the tools. Too late, too little. They even dispatched our former pastor to help me make sense of things. However, the actual karma was only beginning, because they had no idea that skipping a single mortgage payment would set off a chain of events that would permanently alter their life. Their cozy little universe in which I was the ATM and Jake was king was about to collapse. You see, without my $800 a month, my parents had been living far over their means for years, using my rent money to support their lifestyle and finance Jake's aspirations to become an internet celebrity. Their whole budget caught fire. The mortgage company called first, followed by the credit card firms. The utilities come next. It turned out that they had been making extremely thin payments, and that all it took for things to fall apart was one late payment. But allow me to explain how everything transpired, because every family member's response was invaluable. First, let's talk about Jake. The transformation of my beloved brother from aspiring Twitch star to actual person was a beautiful experience. Walmart's first week, he received a reprimand for using his phone while working. In the second week, a client insulted him by asking him to assist carry groceries in the rain, which caused him to lose it. By the third week, he was pleading for funds from his streaming audience. He earned $247. The last nail in the coffin of his influencer career was the internet being shut down. In his final stream, he sobbed uncontrollably about how cruel life is. Despite spamming F in the conversation, his 12 viewers were incredibly supportive as the video quality continued to deteriorate until it eventually turned black. Mom broke down more gradually. She had to cancel her expensive gym membership first. After that, she has weekly hair appointments and necessary spa treatments. For the first time in 15 years, she made an attempt to get employment. As it happens, professional enablement is not a talent that is in high demand on LinkedIn. In the end, she and Jake shared a Walmart job. A different change. It's ironic that they both wore those blue vests after demeaning shop employees for years. A kiss from the chef. Dad's pride suffered the most. The job of the successful provider has always been his. Something snapped in him when he had to sell his golf clubs to pay off a portion of his mortgage, even though I was the one who was really supplying. He was no longer invited to the weekly games of his country club friends. In certain circles, it turns out that friendship is only as strong as your pocketbook. Finally, they had to list the house for sale last week. Next month, they will move into a 2-bedroom apartment. The 3 of them. Jake is upset that he has share a room with his father. Mom is heartbroken because she can't afford to buy books for her reading club, but the flat lacks a suitable venue for their activities. The true icing on the cake. At work, I received a promotion. Position of lead mechanic. Large wage increase. Company vehicle. They attempted contacting them again with a business proposal after hearing back. They apparently wanted to move in with me so that we could pool our resources as a family and invest in my career. I instructed them to stop using my phone after responding with a copy of their mortgage bills that demonstrated how they had taken advantage of me for years. As I sit here in my paid-for apartment with all of my bills paid and my tools securely kept in my own garage, I watch my family learn some very costly lessons about the repercussions of their actions. Jake and Mom are competing for Employee of the Month for 3 months, and Jake is still working at Walmart. So yet neither has prevailed. I'm preparing to take a 2-week holiday with the money I've saved since quitting my family while Dad delivers pizzas at night. Contributions. Sometimes life is amusing. They treated me like a backup plan, a servant, and an ATM for years. They are now discovering the hard way that you cannot treat people like trash and expect them to continue supporting your way of life. Yes, I did file for the hearings in small claims court next month as folks are inquiring about the tools. I have all of the records, pictures, and even quotes from Jake's pals. It ought to be fascinating. No, I will not assist them in getting back on their feet. For once, they are able to walk alone. My cousin just called to talk about combining resources to live in the apartment they are holding a family meeting. It seems that Jake is supposed to pay 1/3 of the rent. The same Jake who, because streaming is his actual work, phoned in sick to Walmart 3 times last week.